The story begins with a man named Song Woo. One day, he decides to try his luck in the city of Busan to make his dream come true, starting his own law firm. Without hesitation, Song Woo went to his friend, Hyung, to borrow money as his first capital. However, early in his career, other lawyers looked down on him because he was only a high school graduate. To start his law firm, Song Woo printed as many business cards as possible and confidently distributed them to potential clients, even making direct promotions to the rich people he met. While attending a bar association meeting, Song Woo was again bullied by fellow lawyers because his status as a high school graduate and the way he handed out business cards was considered inappropriate for the lawyer profession. However, Song Woo's courage and hard work led him to become a famous lawyer in the property sector, and his law firm now has many clients. Finally, Song Woo recruited another lawyer named Park Dong-ho. After returning to a house that was cramped and full of mice, Song Woo showed off a sack of money to his wife. Song Woo's wife is confused about what to do with the money. However, Song Woo has the idea to buy an apartment, even though the owner is initially reluctant to sell it. With a high price offer, the apartment owner finally agreed to sell it to Song Woo. This story tells the story of Song Woo, who used to be a construction worker who lived in poverty. He couldn't even afford the costs of giving birth to his wife in the hospital, and his mother-in-law paid all the costs. Apart from that, Song Woo has a debt to the stall owner. When he wanted to pay his debt, he only had 500 won, about $0.36. Unable to pay, Song Woo ran away. However, he ultimately used the money to buy lots of books and continued studying them until he achieved success. After successfully buying an apartment, Song Woo found writing that he had written when he was still a construction worker in the apartment. It was those memories that made him determined to buy the apartment. In the evening, Song Woo invited his family to eat at his regular restaurant. The shop owner, Ajuma, was moved to see Song Woo's success and wanted to build a friendship, because Song Woo kept forcing him to pay his debt. Ajuma only asked Song Woo to always come to eat at his stall. Day after day, Song Woo's office was always busy with the arrival of clients, as Song Woo had promised Ajuma. Even Park Dong, his co-worker, is bored because he always eats at the same stall, but because there is no other choice, he has to keep following his boss's orders. Because there are more and more clients, Song Woo finally decides to renovate the office and looks for a female secretary to help him. That evening, Song Woo was relaxing at home when Ajuma came asking for help to quickly solve his shop's tax problem. After Ajuma left, Song Woo's wife suddenly became jealous because Song Woo had a new female secretary in his office. Even though Song Woo tried to seduce him, Song Woo's wife finally melted. One night, Song Woo invited his high school friends to dinner and a reunion at his regular restaurant. While the reunion was taking place, a friend named Lee, a journalist, watched news about the demonstration on TV. Lee is very sympathetic to the students demonstrating, but Song Woo disagrees, considering it a waste of time. As a high school graduate, Song Woo feels more successful than his friends who are now in college. They argue and end up fighting. After making peace, Ajuma gave a 7-minute lecture to Song Woo. Song Woo also spoke with Ajuma's son, Jinwoo, who had a different opinion. Song Woo was annoyed and took out money while scolding Jinwoo. Ajuma was offended because he thought not everything could be bought with money, and finally kicked Song Woo out. A few days later, Song Woo's income decreased because many lawyers in Busan City opened legal services like Song Woo did. Finally, Song Woo had the idea to invite Park Dong to execute him. They planned to change gears and focus on taxation. Park Dong agrees with this plan. However, suddenly outside the office, a group of people demonstrated his office efforts. Meanwhile, a detective named Cha, who has just received an award, is ordered by his superior to clean Busan of communists. The next day, Detective Cha meets with a prosecutor named Kang Young-cheol to handle the communist case. Even a medical officer named Colonel Yoon was sent to monitor the health of the exiled prisoners under Cha's command. Years later, in 1981, the communist case went viral. In his office, Hyung feels dizzy when he gets a client who asks for his help in dealing with this problem. Hyung then meets Song Woo to ask for help in resolving the national security law case. However, because it was not his field, Song Woo politely refused the invitation. A few days later, Jinwoo and his friends were having a book discussion at his teacher's house. While Jinwoo was presenting, suddenly Detective Cha entered the class and tried to arrest Jinwoo. The teacher immediately told Jinwoo to run away, and Detective Cha mobilized his men to chase Jinwoo until he caught him. Meanwhile, Ajumma waited for Jinwoo, who never came home. Worried, Ajumma even closed his shop for months while continuing to look for Jinwoo. On the other hand, Song Woo is now known as a tax lawyer. Even Lee Chong-jun from Haidong Construction was asked by his superiors to meet Song Woo and ask him to take care of his company taxes. Haidong Construction is a company in the top 10. If Song Woo accepts clients from this company, his reputation will definitely improve. However, Song Woo couldn't focus and was instead distracted by the news that Jinwoo had suddenly disappeared. Song Woo asked Park Dong to find out at the police station, but unfortunately there was no information about Jinwoo's whereabouts because he was on the list of communist henchmen. The next day, Song Woo met Ajumma, who was waiting for him in front of the office. Ajumma wants to ask Song Woo for help to free Jinwoo. Ajumma received a letter from the police station that Jinwoo will undergo trial tomorrow. However, the police forbade Ajumma from seeing Jinwoo. Song Woo found it strange because family and relatives should have the right to meet prisoners in prison. Although Song Woo is reluctant, Ajumma prostrates himself and vows to devote himself to his family if Song Woo will help him. However, Song Woo had to leave immediately because he had a meeting with the director of Haidong Construction. While waiting for the meeting, Park Dong tells Song Woo that Jinwoo is on the list of communist henchmen. Before the story goes any further, Haidong's director arrives and the meeting begins. Continuing to think about it, Song Woo looked for Ajumma's address and waited until he fell asleep. When Ajumma came home, Song Woo asked him to go to prison to meet Jinwoo. Initially, the guards banned them for various reasons. However, Song Woo continued to insist and even threatened to sue them. Finally, Song Woo and Ajumma were allowed to meet Jinwoo. There, Ajumma continues to pray until Jinwoo arrives. Jinwoo looked very thin and pale, and his mother, who saw him, was very moved and surprised to learn about her son's condition. Not long after, the guards came and immediately took Jinwoo back to the detention cell. In the cell, Detective Cha and his team continued to torture Jinwoo to make him confess to actions he didn't actually commit. Not long after, Colonel Yoon was asked to check on Jinwoo, who had fainted. Actually, Jinwoo only pretended to faint so he wouldn't be tortured again. Knowing this, Colonel Yoon felt sorry for him and wanted to help him, because he couldn't bear to see the treatment that Jinwoo received. Song Woo immediately went to Hyung's office and wanted to know more about the communist case that was going viral. Hyung also told about the arrest case of the book reading community, and one of its members was Jinwoo. They were arrested because they were thought to have studied banned and anti-government books. Song Woo also studied books that were considered deviant, even willing to stay up late to read a book entitled What is History?, the work of someone named Carr, who was considered a communist figure. After finishing reading all the books, in the morning, Song Woo went to Hyung's house and was ready to become a lawyer to free members of the book community who he thought were innocent. He believes the books have nothing to do with communist ideology. During the trial, Song Woo saw a number of violations of the South Korean constitution. However, prosecutors and judges disputed this, stating that normal law does not apply in national security cases. However, Song Woo firmly stated the articles that they had to comply with before the trial began. Hearing that, the judge complied with the rules before the trial. After the first trial was over, Song Woo was lectured by his team leader. Even so, Song Woo doesn't care and believes the data obtained from his investigators is true. He realized that the students' confessions were obtained through torture, so he still defended Jinwoo and did not want to give up. At the next trial, the prosecutor began by arguing that these students studied a book entitled What is History, published by Carr. In response, Song Woo received a note from the British consulate stating that Carr was a British ambassador, not a communist ideologue. In fact, the books mentioned are books that are recommended for reading by South Korean people and are recommended by Seoul National University. After the trial was over, Song Woo met Jinwoo and immediately asked who beat him and where he was. Jinwoo revealed that it was all Commander Cha and Yoon's doing. Song Woo also searched for their whereabouts based on the characteristics of the people and locations described by Jinwoo. After a long search, Song Woo finally managed to find the location and iron rod that was used to hit Jinwoo. Song Woo felt very sad knowing that there was torture. When he was about to leave the building, Commander Cha suddenly found him and immediately beat him until he was pushed out. Commander Cha gets angry and tells Song Woo to go home. At the next trial, the judge gave Song Woo a chance to start. Song Woo asked Jinwoo several questions, including about irregular feeding and the torture he had to face in order for Jinwoo to write his testimony. Song Woo believes that Jinwoo and the other students are innocent, and that it is actually the authorities who are breaking the law by torturing innocent civilians. The prosecutor did not accept this and threatened to remove Song Woo from the courtroom, but Song Woo still asked Jinwoo and listened to his story about his experience in the seclusion room. All the defendants cried and their families demanded justice for the torture their children experienced. The trial became chaotic and the judge was forced to postpone the trial to discuss the sentence with the prosecutors. Song Woo wants to continue the trial to reveal this manipulation of public authorities and asks Detective Cha to testify. Journalist Lee, who witnessed Song Woo's determination to defend the truth, felt concerned and sympathized. Since then, journalist Lee has dared to write news that reveals the truth. The next morning, newspapers containing communist rumors spread, and the director of Haedong Construction asked Lee Chong-jun to meet Song Woo and cancel the cooperation. However, Director Haedong gave a message that if Song Woo stopped taking on the national security law case, they would happily accept their cooperation again. Wisely, Song Woo refused and chose to continue as a lawyer in the case. On the way to court, people were demonstrating and throwing rotten eggs at Song Woo. Journalist Lee lends his jacket to Song Woo, and their friendship improves again. Outside the courtroom, the defendants' parents protested and wanted to enter, but the guards forbade them. Even though there were many empty seats in the courtroom, Song Woo couldn't help the parents in, and the trial had to start anyway. Song Woo has the opportunity to ask questions to Detective Cha as a witness. However, Detective Cha's testimony, which does not match the facts, makes Song Woo annoyed. The two argued, and surprisingly, Detective Cha publicly denied the accusations of torturing the accused and claimed that all the bruises and wounds they suffered were their own doing. Conditions at the trial became increasingly unfavorable, and the trial continued the next day. Song Woo returns to his office and is shocked to see it in a messy state after being investigated for suspected tax evasion. The terror even reached his family, and his wife was frightened after receiving a threatening phone call that threatened her child's safety. Currently, Song Woo is under surveillance even in his office. Suddenly, a food courier came to deliver food. At first, Song Woo felt strange because he didn't feel like ordering food. Apparently, the courier also delivered a letter. Through the courier, Colonel Yoon invited Song Woo to meet and offer himself as a witness at the trial later. A happy Song Woo immediately met Hyung and the team and proposed Colonel Yoon as a new witness. The plan was finally approved, and journalist Lee was even ready to invite foreign journalists to cover the news at tomorrow's trial. The morning before the trial, Song Woo came to the judge's house and presented a new witness. Of course, the application was rejected. Song Woo also threatened to hold a press conference which would be attended by various journalists from abroad to cover it if the judge did not want to grant the request. And sure enough, when the trial started, Song Woo immediately proposed Colonel Yoon as a new witness and was immediately approved by the judge. Song Woo immediately asked questions about the news of the torture, and Colonel Yoon admitted to the court that the defendants were tortured and was willing to explain their torture methods in detail. However, Cha reported the situation to his superiors, and they were able to frame Colonel Yoon, who was deemed unprofessional at work, so that the judge canceled his testimony and sent Colonel Yoon to prison. Seeing this, Song Woo was so annoyed with the judge's actions that the room became chaotic, and Song Woo was forced to leave the courtroom. After being thrown out of the courtroom, Song Woo and Ajuma returned to their shop. Not long after the trial was over, Song Woo's team of lawyers came to give the news that the case had been lost. However, the judge offered leniency by giving Jinwoo and his friends a maximum prison sentence of 2 years. In 1987, Song Woo had transformed into a demonstration leader fighting for human rights. One day, Song Woo was arrested for his activities and charged with sedition. Song Woo resigned himself to accepting the results of the court's decision. What amazed him was that 99 of the 142 lawyers in Busan attended his trial and expressed their support for Song Woo. And this is the end of this story.